There's a lot of new information going on in this Nolan Wells case, y'all. Who is selling the boat Nolan was on? And this is why I was so mad at the people in Mississippi. Because they are dragging their feet, taking their time. This whole time, you got people out here trying to sell evidence and shit.
The boat was already gone, and now a group of TikTok investigators says they may have uncovered a new trail of evidence that raises even more questions about what happened to Nolan Wells. Let that sink in. If a vessel connected to the official investigation into Nolan's death was publicly listed for sale and eventually transferred to a new owner, while the state's autopsy findings remain sealed, then an uncomfortable question emerges. How was a potentially significant piece of physical evidence allowed to leave the chain of public scrutiny? Over the past several days, 5 independent digital investigators on TikTok have circulated separate findings that appear to challenge important parts of the publicly known timeline. Their discoveries involve far more than the boat itself. They point to online listings for a vessel identified in state marine records, the Nolan Wells family's decision to retain a court-certified audio specialist, newly circulated collections of social media photographs that appear to illuminate relationships surrounding the trip, and public comments from families connected to witnesses who now say they have taken firm positions about what they believe happened. But none of those developments by themselves establishes what happened to Nolan. What they do is reopen questions that many people believed had already been answered. To understand why these online investigations have attracted so much attention, we have to go back to the beginning, to July 4th, 2024. Nolan Wells was only 18 when he left for a holiday outing toward Horn Island off the Mississippi coast. He was traveling aboard a private watercraft with a group of other young people. By the time that 4th of July outing was over, Nolan was missing. 2 days later, his body was found, along the shoreline near the island's northwest end. The earliest accounts presented the incident as a disastrous boating situation. The explanation described a vessel experiencing problems and taking on water, while Nolan supposedly made the decision to remain behind as others continued on. But as Nolan's family began pressing for answers, that explanation came under increasing scrutiny. Details provided by people connected to the trip did not always appear to align cleanly. Then independent researchers began examining publicly available digital material, timelines, photographs, records, and audio, and suddenly the story was no longer just about what happened on the water. It was about what could be proven afterward. That is where the first viral TikTok investigation entered the picture, and it raised a question that would lead to an even deeper examination of the evidence.
A second statement on Facebook. Now, Ashley Cole is the stepmama of one of them boys on the boat. I think Warren Hudson is his name. They see. They're watching. They know Nolan's parents are not playing. We have decided that we will not be speaking to the press at this time. The media is not the appropriate forum to further elaborate on the facts of July 4th, 2026. We realize that the truth will not stop the cause for the death of our small children. We have not had the opportunity to speak to the Wells-Wansley family or their attorney. However, we are willing to directly communicate with attorney Ben Crump and the Wells-Wansley family. We will provide them with all the proper information known to us so their family can rest and properly mourn. We also want to know what happened to Nolan. We will do everything within our power to assist Nolan's family in their quest for answers. If you go to Facebook and you search her name, you can see the original post, and attached to it, she has some screenshots of her inbox and some video messages that are very disturbing. Go take a look for yourselves.
So it looks like Trayson out here running his mouth. He said he done chose a side.
Are we choosing sides now? I'm so confused. Drew a line in the sand and chose a side. What side did you choose? You left out that part. Come back and let us know what side you chose. At this point, why would you say that?
Drew a line in the sand and chose a side. I don't know what side you chose, bruh, but ain't no way. Ain't no way. Brooks Edmiston is selling a boat, y'all. When was a Boston Whaler ever mentioned? Who was on that boat? It's the boat B was driving, allegedly. Bombshell, y'all. Yes. A 1988 Boston Whaler is one of the boats mentioned in the timeline and independent investigative report surrounding the Nolan Wells case.
In the first clip, online investigators say they located a social media marketplace listing posted by Brooks Edmond offering a 1988 Boston Ware watercraft for sale. At first glance, it might appear to be nothing more than another used boat being advertised online, but the researchers focused on one detail that changed the significance of the listing. A 1988 Boston whaler is referenced in documentation from the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources as one of the vessels present around Horn Island on the day Nolan disappeared. That connection is what caused the listing to spread. As screenshots and recordings of the advertisement moved across social media, viewers began asking a much larger question. Had the boat potentially connected to the investigation already been sold or transferred to someone else? And if that is what happened, when did the transfer occur? More importantly, was the vessel still being treated as potential evidence at that point? Those questions become even more significant because Nolan's case was still developing, and the state autopsy findings remained sealed while authorities prepared for grand jury proceedings. That does not establish that the boat was improperly handled, or even that the listed vessel was definitively the same boat involved in the circumstances surrounding Nolan's death. But it does highlight an issue investigators and the public cannot simply ignore. How was potentially relevant physical evidence identified, preserved, documented, and maintained during the earliest stages of the investigation? And while the debate over the boat continued online, another piece of the case was receiving renewed attention. This time, the focus was not on physical evidence, it was on audio. A second viral breakdown began examining the family's efforts to have the available recordings professionally analyzed, and that investigation would introduce another layer of questions surrounding what may have been captured during the critical moments of Nolan's final moan hours.
I found all the people that were on Katie's boat, y'all. Shout out to the real Jada J that turned me on to this picture. And as y'all can see, we've got a match with the necklace and the swimsuit. Think I busted out my glasses and red lipstick just for the swimsuit? Nah. Now, as I talked about yesterday, we've all suspected that this is Kendall for a while now. The identity of this curly-haired girl has always eluded us. Well, not anymore, folks. For now, I'm gonna just refer to these girls as T and L. As you can see, L clearly has the same kind of hair texture that's in the bottom of this picture. We know that these two were together on 4th of July, and T did not one, but two Nolan tributes after his body was found. Now, another one of their friends had a reel, which they did a little panning video on the best 4th of July ever. And who was in that video? Well, that looks to me to be Jacob, Kendall's longtime boyfriend. So it seems confirmation to me that both Kendall and her boyfriend were on this boat the entire day. Now that I have found this group of friends, I was scouring the pictures and I found this. We've got Elle with somebody I immediately recognized because I remembered that swimsuit and they tried to hide this picture in a document dump so you didn't know what day it was. Well, if it isn't Nevaeh.
Oh, she back! She back!
Same swimsuit, same belly ring, and there she is clearly earlier in the day with Kendall, clearly on the same boat. And just in case you didn't see my video on the Tube of You yesterday, or just need a reminder, here was the friend group breakdown that I had. But to me, this seemingly clearly confirms that these two were on this boat probably all day. I say this because there's another picture from the summer with Nevaeh with the little pink cup right here. You can see the pink cup in the lap of Kendall up here, along with the matching, poles and this, all of it matches. Now I want to go back to this picture because in the background there, we see somebody seemingly approaching the group to join them to go out in red shorts. And y'all know that I've been saying for a while that in my humble opinion, I believe that the person in red shorts is Warren's brother. But now I also think there's a strong possibility that it could be Lainey's boyfriend, Drew. Just as further confirmation, these glasses match the glasses that are in the Katie Snapchat. I think it's pretty safe to say that we definitely found the people that were on the boat with Katie. Now here's where it gets a little interesting to me though. Look at how late in the day this picture seems to be taken. And they clearly were still out at night. So did they drop everybody else off? Did they come back out? Got a lot of unknowns here, but I did my social media scour. And let me explain to you what I found. So we've got Elle and T on the boat with Kendall and Nevaeh, like we've confirmed that. We also know at some point Katie was on the boat with them as well. T was the only one that seemed to be connected to Nolan on social media. Now remember how the person who released the Snapchat pictures of Katie said that they were not friends with her? Well, I found that T was actually connected to a lot of people social media wise, whether they were following her or she was following them. I was able to find Javon. I was able to find Ava D, the girl from the party. I was able to find the entire Hudson family, as well as Katie, Lainey, Trin, Ava, all of the other friend group, the core group that I talked about yesterday. And I found out that Elle was either following or was followed by Ava, Jax, and Bart. Now here's the real kicker. When I went to T's Book of Face page, I found out that she was FB friends with not only Warren's mom, but Bart's mom as well, and several other adults that are close friends with that mom group. And I also found out that Lainey and Nevaeh are both friends with the older McGrath brother, but it seems like he was in Texas at the time, so most likely he was not on the boat or around for this. However, he does have a younger brother who is friends with T on social media. And that makes me wonder if the younger McGrath brother might have been on that boat. Now remember, Lainey said that she was not on Horn Island. She was with a different group of friends on a different island altogether. But now I'm wondering if this boat, this group, might have been the other group that they got into the altercation with. Because remember, they specifically said that they knew the guy, like knew of him, but they weren't like friends with him. Because does nobody else think it's weird that whoever else they were fighting on the beach hasn't come forward? Especially if they were people that didn't really know these people? But could this boat have been the fourth boat that we've seen? Because if this is the same red shorts guy, then how did he get onto the other boat?
The second revelation centers on what appears to be a significant escalation in the Wells family's effort to have the emergency recording independently examined. Before this latest development, independent audio examiner Janetta Brantley had reportedly performed frequency isolation on the emergency Seto dispatch recording. Her analysis focused on sounds buried beneath the primary transmission, including background voices, and she reported hearing the name Bart before that detail had circulated publicly, but her findings quickly became the subject of online debate. Some critics questioned the methodology and argued that the interpretation had not been independently verified. Then the Wells family took another step. According to the information surrounding the case, Nolan's family retained a certified forensic audio engineer to conduct a more extensive examination of the approximately 8-minute recording. That distinction matters. Rather than relying solely on an independent online analysis, the family was seeking a professional forensic review capable of documenting what could actually be isolated from the recording, and what could not. The examination would focus on the layers hidden beneath the main transmission: background speech, engine sounds, ambient noise, and portions of conversation that may have been difficult to hear in the original audio. But there is an important distinction here. Hiring a certified expert does not automatically prove that any disputed phrase or voice is genuine, nor does it guarantee that the resulting analysis will establish what happened to Nolan. What it does provide is the possibility of a more formal evidentiary record, one that could potentially be evaluated alongside the rest of the evidence in the case, including any material presented to a grand jury. And that brings the investigation to another unexpected development. While questions surrounding the emergency recording continued to grow, online researchers began examining something much more personal: the people Nolan was with, the relationships within that group, and the photographs that had begun circulating publicly. Those images appeared to offer a different window into the dynamics surrounding the trip. And the third viral clip claimed to uncover details about that friend group that had not previously received the same level of public attention.
Last year, 17 months, there's been 24 African Americans, as of today, 24 African Americans found hanging from trees across the United States of America. Just this past week alone, there's been at least 2 cases. You understand? And in case after case after case, the local coroners very predictably declared these as without any serious forensic investigation taking place at all. No follow-up. You understand me? Not to mention the Nolan Wells case from the 4th of July, when he went out with those 4 or 5 white kids in Mississippi. They came back and he didn't come back. You understand? And all those white boys, they're the sons of the local power structure. That's who they are. They shrug their shoulders. Their parents shrug their shoulders. The police shrug their shoulders. The judges, the media, the power structure, everybody shrugs their shoulders about what could have possibly happened to Nolan Wells. It's a mystery, which makes it no mystery at all. Which makes it no mystery at all. But see, they'll gaslight you into thinking that you're being overly suspicious. You're being overly cynical, and the problem is that you want answers, not that they don't have any answers. The problem is that you want the answers that they don't have, which is just a way to try to make you accept that same unspoken answer that black communities in Mississippi and throughout the South and throughout the United States always got. You understand me? About Nolan Wells and about the other 24 African Americans found dangling from tree branches across that country. Never mind that black Americans are demographically the population that is absolutely the least likely group of people to ever commit by hanging themselves. That's documented. That's not an opinion. So when a method that is statistically rare for this specific population, when that shows up again and again and again in public spaces, in trees, outside of schools, outside of homes, and it gets closed as a suicide without any comprehensive investigation whatsoever, without any real forensic follow-through, well, everybody knows what's going on. Everybody understands what's going on. Listen, 24 in 17 months, that is roughly equivalent to the rate of lynchings in America during the 1920s. You understand me? No, when a black person is found hanging from a tree in the United States of America, the default assumption of investigators should always be lynching. It's like if a woman turns up dead, the first thing that you're going to do is suspect the husband or suspect her ex, right? You start with a presumption of foul play. You start with a presumption of homicide. You start with a presumption of foul play, which is exactly what you should do in every single one of these cases. If you find a black person hanging from a tree in America, you should treat it the same as if you see someone who's been double tapped in the back of the head. And if you do rule it as the moment that you zip up the body bag, why, we have every reason to believe that you're the one who did it. Yes, and you're going to have to prove otherwise. I'm telling you. If you rule something like that as a suicide, that ruling is in and of itself incriminating evidence against you. You can't tell anyone, you can't tell any serious, intelligent person that there's no evidence of foul play. No. If an African American is hanging from a tree in the United States of America, that is the evidence of foul play by default. You might as well say that Jake himself before you say that a black man or a black woman strung themselves up in Mississippi and expect anyone to believe you. And if you say they did that, then we need to search your property for ropes. You understand? Especially when you claim it's before you've even cut them down from the tree.
So people are saying it's the police, and I'm screaming it from the mountaintops. It's the effing cops, or the 3Ks, or both. How much of a difference is there?
Y'all, we're about to get some answers regarding that CTO call, because Nolan Xavier Wells' family went and hired an audio expert to analyze and break down completely that CTO call. We all know that we heard what we heard when it was officially released by the MDMR. And of course, there was a lot of skeptic people out there thinking that those that enhanced it so that they can hear clearly what we all heard, assumed or thought that they inserted certain names or they inserted certain things to, but we all know what we heard. Anyways, at the end of the day, prayerfully, we will get some answers. Obviously, when the family sees fit to share what the experts find. And so, because, I don't know about nobody else, but for me, I was feeling like Vicky was asking specific questions because she heard what we heard as well. But we're about to find out because, again, they went and hired an audio expert that's going to break it all down for them, prayerfully for us too. And because they are across.
The third deep dive took the investigation in a very different direction. For weeks, online attention had centered around rumors involving a young woman identified as Katie. But independent researchers began looking beyond those early theories, comparing publicly available photographs, social media connections, clothing details, jewelry, and archived digital material. Their conclusion was different. The researchers claimed that the available digital trail pointed instead toward a young woman named Lainey. According to their analysis, Lainey was reportedly dating Drew Johnson around the time of the island trip. Johnson is a person identified in official Marine Department documentation, making that connection particularly significant to the online investigators. They also pointed to another detail they considered important. Among the people in that immediate peer group, Johnson was reportedly the only individual who appeared to have a social media connection with Nolan. None of this establishes a motive, and the digital comparisons themselves would need independent verification before they could be treated as definitive evidence. But the discovery raised a different set of questions. Who was actually traveling with whom that day? Which individuals were aboard each vessel? Were any of the boats connected or positioned together near Horn Island? And what, if anything, happened between the different groups before the reported confrontations on the beach? Those questions matter because reconstructing the relationships between the people present could help investigators understand the sequence of events, but only if those digital clues can be independently confirmed. And while researchers were examining those relationships, another development was unfolding away from the boats and the recordings. Ashley Cole, identified as the stepmother of Warren Hudson, published a statement on social media announcing that her family would no longer participate with public media outlets. Instead, she said they were prepared to communicate directly with civil rights attorney Ben Crump and the Wells family's legal team and provide whatever information they had. At roughly the same time, posts from people connected to the group began using increasingly confrontational language, including statements suggesting that different sides had now been chosen. That shift does not prove that earlier accounts were false, but it does demonstrate how sharply the public narrative had changed. What initially appeared to be a unified account surrounding the July 4th outing was now being surrounded by competing interpretations, legal positioning, disputed evidence, and families choosing carefully who they were willing to speak with. And that brings us to the fifth and final breakdown. Because beyond the boats, the photographs, the audio, and the conflicting accounts was a much larger question. Were there failures in the system itself that allowed crucial questions to remain unanswered?
Everybody was thinking that it was Katie that Nolan was dating, allegedly. They're saying that it was Lainey while she was still in a relationship with another guy. So instead of Katie and Bart, it's Lainey and the other guy. And there's a comment saying that Lainey been posting July 4th pics for the past 2 years, but on this July 4th, she posted no pics. Or did she delete them? Check this out, y'all.
All right, so picking up from the last video I just made. So as we know that Morgan, Trayson, and Wyatt met, and all of the other ones met on Horns Island to speak with the officials. Talk about Trayson real quick. I don't know why Trayson would throw all of these people under the bus. Trayson said that he made a slick comment to Nolan about Katie. Warren said the same thing too. They made a slick comment to Nolan about the girl that he was with. Again, alleged that it was Katie. Well, it wasn't Katie. And remember, I said, well, who is the freaking girl? Because it can't be Katie, because we all assumed that it was Katie. It was Lainey. Now, the people that was named in the MDMR, they're all friends with Trayson and Trayson's sister, which is why I don't understand why so yes, that picture that Katie took with the snapshot and it says 6 something, that's Lainey with her face taken out. Like, so his longtime boyfriend is Drew Johnson, who was also named in the MDMR. Let me show you again. Now, Jay said that when she did her homework, she saw that Drew Johnson was also friends with Wyatt, Warren, and Morgan. He went and looked, and Drew Johnson is the only one who is friends with Nolan. Now, I know you're like, royalty. Okay, put the pieces together. Okay, well, Drew Johnson, who is also in the MDMR report, is Lainey's boyfriend. In relationship with Nolan, allegedly. We're going to say allegedly with everything. No, she was involved with Nolan at some point while she was still dating Drew.
The fifth and final breakdown moves beyond the individual pieces of evidence and into the larger legal questions surrounding Nolan Wells' death. According to reporting and statements surrounding the case, an independent autopsy raised questions about discoloration observed toward the back of Nolan's head, while the state's autopsy findings remain sealed from public release. That divide has become one of the most contentious aspects of the investigation. The Wells family and their supporters have continued pushing for greater transparency, while national legal and civil rights organizations, including the NAACP Legal Defense Fund and members of the Congressional Black Caucus, according to the claims surrounding the case, have called for federal attention and potential Department of Justice oversight. The underlying concern is straightforward. If local conclusions about the absence of foul play were reached before every relevant digital extraction, forensic examination, and autopsy process had been fully completed, critics argue that the public could reasonably question whether the investigation moved too quickly toward a particular interpretation. A federal review, if undertaken, could provide another layer of scrutiny. That could include examining digital records, mobile device data, forensic material, investigative files, and the physical evidence connected to the vessels that were present around Horn Island. But even with all of those questions circulating, one fact remains difficult to escape. Nolan Wells is dead. And the explanations surrounding his final hours continue to face scrutiny from his family, independent researchers, legal advocates, and members of the public. 5 separate online investigations have now focused attention on different parts of the case. One examined the reported sale of a Boston whaler potentially connected to the Marine Department records. Another focused on the forensic examination of the emergency audio. A third attempted to reconstruct the relationships within Nolan's social circle through publicly available digital material. A fourth highlighted the increasingly divided public positions among families connected to people involved in the trip. And the final breakdown widened the lens, asking whether the investigation itself received the level of oversight that a case this complicated demands. None of these developments standing alone provides a definitive answer to how Nolan died. But together, they demonstrate why questions surrounding the case have refused to disappear. The boat, the audio, the photographs, the conflicting accounts, the sealed stay findings, and the unanswered questions surrounding Nolan's final hours. Each piece adds another layer to a story that is still being investigated. For the Wells family, the demand remains simple. They want the complete truth about what happened to Nolan and accountability wherever the evidence ultimately leads. And perhaps the most important question is still the one that has remained unanswered from the beginning. What really happened during those final hours on Horn Island? Until the remaining evidence is fully examined and the unanswered questions are resolved, that question will continue to hang over the case. And for Nolan Wells' family, the search for those answers is far from over.